I wanted to ask you about your running backs, and you said earlier this spring that you hoped Noah Cain would be able to do stuff the back half of spring. Has he, and has Devin Ford kind of taken that next step as well?
Yeah, so Noah has been able to go, not full go, not in live settings, but he is getting reps, which I think has been good. In my mind, he's probably a little bit further ahead than I anticipated him being. So the reps have been good that he's been able to get. Devin Ford has shown flashes, but I think as a group in general, we still need to be a little bit more consistent. I think there's still a lot left in the tank at that position, and even with Devin. And I think that's, you could make the argument that's also exciting because, they've shown flashes, but it's all about consistency, day in and day out, when opportunities arise, being able to maximize them. But I'm seeing Devin do good things more often and more consistently, but still not where we need it to be.
So Mark Brennan and then Ben Jones.
Hey, James, I wonder if you could touch on the areas this spring where you've made the most progress, with only a couple practices left. And are there any areas where maybe you didn't make the sort of progress you were hoping? Maybe you could have used a little bit more time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think obviously the first thing that jumps out is obviously having spring ball this spring, and the work that we've gotten in on offense. Obviously losing some quarterbacks. It's put Taquan and Vayu in a situation where they're getting a bunch of reps and got a lot of responsibility and a lot on their plate. So that's been something, that work, not only this spring, but then also going into the summer is going to be really important. So not only do we feel good about, our starter, but also clearly the backup. That probably jumps out to me. Our secondary, I thought we had a chance to be good, but the additions of Johnny Dixon and Kalen King have changed things, and I think we got a lot more guys that we can play with and win with. Kalen King is probably the most advanced freshman that we have had since we've been here, in terms of his ability to practice, compete, both physically and mentally. He's really doing well. You'd come to practice and you wouldn't think that. The transfers that we have gotten have been really good athletic fits for us, but they've also been really good cultural fits as well. They're great guys. I think you guys are going to really enjoy getting to know them. They've been really good. They're probably the things that probably jump out to me the most, based on your question.
Ben Jones and then Joe Giuliano.
Hey, James, how's it going?
Hey, Ben, how are you, buddy?
Good. We hear all the time that people say, an assistant is a good recruiter, but that's a somewhat nebulous definition. How do you define the hallmarks of a good recruiter? And this is sort of obvious, but how important is it to have those camps in person again this year?
Yeah, I think really important. For us, the camps really, where the value shows up is not even necessarily this year. It's identifying, some of the young talent for the following year is typically how the camp, model usually works and usually, helps you. I think that'll be obviously different this year after not having a camp last year. There's just so many guys that you haven't had a chance to evaluate in person. So I think those things are really important. From a recruiting standpoint and from a recruiter, it's a lot of different things. It's like anything else. Guys have strengths and guys have weaknesses. No one has it all. So you got some coaches that are really good in the evaluation process. You got some coaches that are really good, in the acquisition process of getting young men and families to feel very comfortable and feel like Penn State is the place that they need to come. Obviously your strongest ones are the guys that can do both, identify and build those relationships. You have guys that have national relationships all over the country that coaches are reaching out. Hey, I got a guy. You've always done a really good job with my recruits in the past, taking care of them. They've had a good experience. So I'm calling you and letting you know about this guy. There's tremendous value in that as well. There's guys that are really good in certain areas. Although a lot of people have gone more to just recruiting by their position, there's guys that are really good in certain areas, whether it's the DMV or whether it is New Jersey or whether it is, Virginia Beach or whatever it may be. And that's their strength. They're just very well regarded and respected in a certain area. So it's all of that. There's, I guess, like any other business, there's two ends of recruiting, and the one end people mostly focus on, which is getting the 5 stars or the 4 stars. But just as valuable, like in any other industry, is trying to reduce or eliminate the mistakes. So it's not just getting the 5 star. It's not taking the wrong 4 star or not taking the wrong 3 star or finding a 2 star or a 3 star that people don't know about, but they're going to be a 5 star when it comes to production, or a 4 star, whatever it may be, however you categorize those things. So there's value in both. And, those are kind of all the different things that you're looking for. And like I said, you got some assistants that are really good in maybe 1 or 2 of those areas, and you got some assistants that are good in 3 or 4 of those areas. And you're also trying to complement that. So maybe the guy that's not as good at identifying but really good at acquiring, that's where the recruiting staff can help with that too.
Joe Giuliano and then Tyler Donahue.
Well, good evening, James.
Hi, Joe.
You referenced quarterbacks in your answer to Mark's question, and I was just wondering, obviously, a couple months ago, you had mentioned that you would be acceptable to take a quarterback out of the portal only if he could help your team. I wonder where that stands now. Are you still in the portal, or is that no longer an issue?
Yeah, I think for us, pretty much at every position, we're going to be open to it. I think what happens is, you kind of have the first wave of the transfer portal. I think there's going to be, probably 2 more waves. You're going to have a post-spring ball transfer portal situation as well. And then you may have, even right before the season starts, a few guys. So we're gonna constantly stay aware of it and monitoring it. And if it's somebody that we think that makes us better, then we're gonna look at it. We're gonna look at it hard. For us, I think it always helps if it's a young man that you have a pre-existing relationship with him and his family, like you recruited them on the front end, so you know a lot about him. That just helps. But that doesn't have to always be the case.
Tyler Donahue, Greg Pickle, you're next.
Hey, James, good evening.
You too, Tyler.
Going back to recruiting, your staff on Tuesday night, you saw them share plans for the camps this summer in June and July. During recent weeks, we've seen a bunch of recruits announce plans for official visits in June. What are you most excited about possibility-wise this summer on the recruiting trail, and how realistic is it, in your opinion now? How confident are you that you can achieve all these plans?
Yeah, it's going to be a situation where, that those summer months or those summer weeks, you're going to be packing a bunch of stuff in there. You're obviously, trying to work with your team and continue to develop your team and finish strong academically. You're going to be doing official visits, unofficial visits, and camps kind of all at the same time. I think sometimes, what happens with the NCAA and and sometimes with the football oversight committee and all these different, people that are out there and making decisions and making recommendations, I think sometimes a lot of these things sound good in theory, but then you got to try to do them all. They're talking about, individual, evaluations on campus for families and kids that maybe aren't comfortable being in a camp setting with COVID. And again, that sounds great, but how are you going to do that? How are you going to manage all these things at the same time? So, like anything, you're going to have to be extremely organized to pull it off. I do think there's some advantages. There's some advantages to having summer visits specifically, in the Big Ten, in terms of getting families and kids from all over the country to come visit our campuses when the weather is great. Maybe the weather's better in this part of the country than anywhere in the country at that time of year. So there's some real value to that. But it also creates some real challenges again with your current team, camps, official visits, unofficial visits. It's going to create some challenges. There's no doubt about it.
Greg Pickle and then T. Frank.
Good evening, James. Back in March, you had said at the start of spring practice that conversations were ongoing about what a final practice or a final scrimmage would look like. So what will that look like? And what might you be able to accomplish this year compared to a year where there was a normal, blue-white game?
I think you can make arguments both ways. The spring game, the blue-white game, spring game is usually it's an opportunity to divide the team, to divide the coaching staff up and play as close to a game as you can. But there's also the value in the practices where, you're going ones against ones and twos against twos, and it's more offense versus defense and getting situations covered and things like that. So sometimes the scrimmage is to make it more digestible, for the fans and for TV, that it's more to what they're used to watching and looking at, where, when it's something like this and it's more of a practice, you can make an argument that we'll get a lot out of it from that perspective as well. So for us, it's going to be more like a practice than it will be a spring game. But we'll have some of the bells and whistles that people will enjoy and the students will enjoy. Our parents, probably it doesn't matter because they come to a bunch of practices normally anyway under normal circumstances. So they're kind of used to it. But I think you can make arguments both ways. There is some advantage of having 75,000 people in there and having everybody split up and allowing some other guys to call the defense and other guys to call the offense and, getting all that operational type stuff. You can make arguments both ways.
T. Frank and then Tobias Wilburn.
James, we talked a little bit earlier in the spring about the offensive line depth and the number of guys you have in that two deep that are in a competition right now. How has that gone this spring, and are you satisfied with what you've seen and with the early indications of who might be where on your depth chart?
Yeah, I think a combination of how we have recruited, and I think Coach Troutline's just done a really good job. He's got really strong relationships with those guys. They're always at his house for dinner. They're always going fishing. His experience as a college player, not a highly recruited high school player, but a college player that obviously was able to compete at a high level, win national championship, get drafted, and I mean this with all the respect in the world. Remember, I went to East Stroudsburg, so I don't want anybody to take this as a shot to a guy that went to Florida. But I think a lot of his success was based on technique and fundamentals, that he kind of worked himself into a player, and those same lessons that allowed him to play in the NFL probably longer than he should have. He's able to use those with the guys, and I think our guys respect that. There's a bunch of guys coaching in the NFL that never played college football. But there's also the guys that, played in the NFL that, they're able to kind of tell some stories and able to identify and connect with the guys based on that. It just gives them credibility with them. So I think that's been a real positive. We have, again, when I talk about the offense and how everybody's running pretty much the same plays, it's about packaging. For us, we have tried to keep probably the least amount of change for the O-line, and I think that's helped. And I think that's helped those guys as well. So a lot of the terminology and the communication, and again, they're really the same plays. So how we communicate, who we're blocking, and how we're blocking them has really not changed a whole lot. So I think that's helped as well, and I think they have a chance to take a step from last year and really start to develop into one of the strengths on our team. I'd also like to mention Bryce Effner has really had a nice spring. I would describe him as the light has really come on for him. He creates position flexibility at tackle, guard, and center. Probably tackle and center as much as anything. We had a guy, twist an ankle the other day in practice, and Bryce had to go in at center and did a damn good job. So he's a guy that we always felt like had the body we were looking for and the athleticism we were looking for, but just was still putting it all together. And he's in a great place right now. There's a lot of people talking about Bryce and excited about his future.
We have time for 2 more questions. Tobias Wilborn, and then we'll close it out with Ralph Russo.
Hi, Tobias.
Hey, Coach, how are you, man? I guess I'll ask you a nice one here. What are you looking forward to? I know it won't be the 75,000, but there will be fans, particularly first-year students. What are you looking forward to about getting some of those first-year kids inside to see a Penn State game type situation?
Yeah, it's going to be good. I think every day in our country and every day in the state of Pennsylvania, and although we've had some setbacks, and I think we probably wish that we were further along at this point with this pandemic, I still think there's signs that we're getting closer to being back to normal in a lot of different things, whether it's vaccines, whether it's people's plans for the fall. Whether it's being able to have some fans, at spring games. I know one of the challenges we have is, we're recruiting guys that want to come to our spring game and that are going down south. One kid that we're recruiting here in the state of Pennsylvania, he's going down south, and you would never even know that that there was a pandemic. They're having a wide open spring game with fans and full capacity and everything else. And he's going to go and get that experience. And obviously we'd love to be able to provide a similar type experience. But I do think it's going to be, again, it's a step in the right direction, and we're appreciative of that. It was, as you guys know, I've said this before, it was totally bizarre last year. As you guys know, I take my lap before every game, home and away, and literally to pull up to the big house and there's not a car in the parking lot, and there's nobody in the stands except for cardboard cutouts, and it's me and Monica. I think you guys know the police officer that works with us, and it's me and her just walking around the stadium, and it's crickets in there. It was bizarre, or pulling up the Rutgers and nobody's giving you the finger and mooning you. And I mean that from a place of love. I miss that. I missed, people screaming and yelling and cussing us out and mooning the buses as we drove by. I know that sounds strange, but it's been bizarre. So to be able to get into Beaver Stadium and have some normalcy with some fans is a step in the right direction. And we hope that, we handle it really well as a community and as an athletic department, as a football program, and it makes people more comfortable to continue progressing in the right direction.
And last question will go to Ralph Russo.
James, it's good to see you. I hope you and your family are well.
You as well, Ralph. Is your wife's been all over this stuff, correct? If I remember, we talked maybe a year ago about this.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for an epidemiologist working in New York City. It's getting better for her too as well. But it's been a rocky and up and down year, but she's doing okay.
You probably have better perspective on this than everybody, just based on what you do for a living and what she does for a living.
Yeah, she's been a huge, a valuable resource. Let's put it that way. I've got a lot of explanations of things that have been very helpful for our business as well.
Yeah, I remember talking about that a year ago. So give her
and again, I hope everything's okay, especially with your daughters.
Thank
you. So the transfer rules are changing. Literally this week, we're going to make those official, where the one-time transfer, the one-time exception, kids are going to be immediately eligible. That'll be official tomorrow.
When you say we're going to make that official, like, are you involved in that process, Frank?
Well,
Ralph? I'm sorry.
No. I guess I should say the NCAA.
Okay.
I was saying we, as in college sports.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, they don't run those by me. But you are not surprised by this. I'm sure everybody's sort of been expecting this. So when you think about this massive change, because it's a big change, what is maybe, let's say, your top level concern? The thing that you're most worried about, that you're interested to see how it will play out?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is I don't think anything's changed. I mean, let's be honest. Over the last 2 years, everybody knew all the transfer policies and the requirements to get immediate eligibility, and everybody was saying whatever they had to say to become eligible. And if a school ever pushed back, even though they knew it wasn't accurate, you couldn't, because you look bad, doing it. So I guess what I would say is I don't think it's changed a whole lot. Because we've been really operating that way for the last couple years. I think a lot of times the NCAA gets beat up, and we've kind of gotten to a point where we won't make any tough decisions right now because it gets in the media, and you lose the battle, on social media or whatever it is. And the reality is, some of these things are not even the NCAA. And not only that, the NCAA really is, we talk about it like it's this entity. Well, the NCAA really is the member institutions. And I think a lot of times we talk about it and point like them, So to me, I get it, but I don't really think a whole lot's changed over the last couple of years of how it's actually really been operating, if that makes sense, Ralph.